It just goes back to communication with partners and clients. That's really all it's going to take. I mean, the only scenario where this makes sense to me is if you're not getting in contact with the client. Everything else, it should be pretty straightforward on path ahead if you're having those conversations in a decent amount of time before the renewal.
Welcome to Demystifying Microsoft, a podcast by the SourcePath Center of Excellence for Microsoft. We believe Microsoft shouldn't be hard. Each week, we break down what's changing across the Microsoft ecosystem, help you solve your toughest challenges, and provide clear, actionable advice to keep you ahead of the curve. If you're responsible for Microsoft decisions and want clarity without complexity, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Demystifying Microsoft podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Taylor, and today I'm joined by Austin Kelly. How you doing, Austin?
Doing all right, Nathan. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. Good to see you. Austin's one of our incredible account managers here at the SourcePath Center of Excellence for Microsoft. And today we're going to be talking about a new big change to Microsoft licensing that's being announced called Extended Service Terms. But before we get to that, I'm going to go grab something out of the news because I just think it's awesome. You know, here at the SourcePath Center of Excellence for Microsoft, we call ourselves the Microsoft Problem Solvers. And so I'd like to volunteer to help NASA with the Outlook issues they're having on Artemis mission. There's machines on the Orion spacecraft that are on their way to the far side of the moon, and they're having Outlook issues. So I've always wanted to be an astronaut, so I'm in. How can I help? Where do I sign up? Because this is definitely right over the middle of the plate for our team.
I mean, Nathan, I'm in Orlando, so it's a quick hop, skip, and a jump down to Cape Canaveral. We can expedite the process, getting someone over there. So
awesome. Let's do it. I am in. Who knew that being an expert with Microsoft desktop software would help you be a part of the space program? It's great. Well, something that isn't rocket science or rocket surgery, as you will, but is kind of a complicated thing that we help a lot of customers with is Microsoft licensing terms. Microsoft has definitely changed the equation over the last couple of years with some big changes, whether that's NCE really complicating a lot of the transaction process now that Microsoft's holding customers to commitment terms, or the addition of the different billing tiers for how you're paying for it, whether you're paying monthly or monthly annual or annual. We now have these different pricing terms. So to kind of add to that, to complicate things further and make this closer to rocket science.
just when you think you figured it out, Nathan, it's something's different. They throw a curveball at you.
They do. So they have announced what's called extended service terms. For years, you know, when we are running Microsoft licenses and helping tenants, helping customers, when your license is expired, or maybe you're in the middle of transitioning between subscriptions or SKUs, when your license is expired, they kind of went into a grace period. You had 30 days of basically everything's kept functioning. You might get a little pop-up in Outlook that says, hey, your licenses are expired, your end users would, but you'd see very little disruption. And so this extended service terms is really applies to Microsoft 365 licenses, Dynamics licenses, Power Platform licenses, and it applies to licenses sold through CSP, through partners like us, through MCA, which is directly with Microsoft with like a credit card, maybe buy online channels. Any organization running licenses for you is going to have to fall under these sort of scenarios. And so, Austin, talk us through how it worked in the past with licensing when you came to the end of a subscription. Maybe you had 100 seats of a license and it expired. How did Microsoft handle that in the past?
When you renew your licenses, if that auto renew feature is turned off, right now you don't lose access to those licenses right away, right? Instead, your subscription actually enters a 30-day grace period that you're essentially not paying for. And everything you've been doing, however you've been using your licenses, whether that's email, whether that's Teams, whether that's SharePoint, whether that's OneDrive, it's still accessible and you don't get charged. So you essentially get 30 days free if those licenses auto renewal is turned off.
We didn't rely on it often, but there were times you just found yourself there. We didn't get through a transition, or maybe customers still deciding. We certainly had that where a number of customers say, hey, just don't renew it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. You get that 30 days. There were some minor limits around. You probably couldn't add seats and change things. And then after that 30 days, you got a more restricted, but still accessible. The licenses would slowly tear down, but they were still available and usable.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're right, Nathan. So after that 30-day grace period, you're kind of in a disabled state for 90 days. Now you can still access the data, but you can't do anything new, right? The email flow is not like it was. And then after that 90 days, it's deleted.
And to Microsoft's credit, this is kind of free usage. It's kind of an unclear result. Hey, you're not paying for this anymore. We're still giving you access. In the past, they've been very kind of generous around that area. They are changing that officially. So extended service terms have been announced. I believe they go into effect on May 4th of 2026, which I'm not sure when this episode will hit the podcast, but probably around that time. It'll be in that sort of time frame. So the timing might be interesting. Well, what is extended service terms? In plain English, it's paid month-to-month extension that begins when a subscription expires and is not renewed. So previously, when a subscription was ending, you kind of had two options: renew or cancel. Renew would do what it seems like. It just re-renew for the next year, the next month, whatever your term is. Cancel, we talked about when you'd stop getting billed, the subscription would go into a disabled state, but the users would still be able to use the licenses. The licenses would stay applied and would be in that state. We now have a third option. You can renew, cancel, which truly ends services. The licenses go away and those users will be unable to access the services the day it expires. Or you can move into EST. It's kind of a temporary mode, but at a premium. And that premium is the monthly rate plus 3%. So for most of our SKUs, we've talked about this on previous episodes. If you buy your licenses annual, paid upfront, annual, that's MSRP. That's the pricing we've seen for years. Most customers do annual commit, but monthly payment. That comes with a 5% premium. Monthly licenses where you're paying month to month and your commitment is month to month come with the 20% premium. In this case, effectively moving into this EST new paid grace period, you're paying at a 23% rate. And if there's no monthly SKU for a license, you're going to pay at a 23% rate. So one nice thing is prorated. You're only paying for the days you use, but you can't make any changes. You can't add or remove licenses or change the SKU. You've got to go address that. So talk to us about some of the key dates around here, Austin, that are related to this change.
Before I do that, I want to say that, I think for the MSPs, the partners out there, the grace period, it was sort of insurance, right? It was almost licensed insurance. And it allowed for partners to give us time to schedule renewal conversations with our clients and, have those upgrade conversations or downgrade, whatever it may be. So the grace period has been forgiving and it's allowed for flexibility. But the only problem is it was free, right? So Microsoft probably lost out on some dollars there, which is why this is coming into effect. But yeah, moving on to the dates, EST actually went into Partner Center back in November of last year. And essentially that was just a sandbox environment, allowing partners to test and prepare for the rollout. Now, even though it was sort of released as a rollout in November, that doesn't mean any customers were impacted or anything like that. So it was strictly for the pre-production visibility for partners to kind of get used to it and see how it's going to look once it goes live. And then February rolls around, and this is where we saw the enablement of the CSP UX and APIs. And this was really the first time that CSPs could explicitly select EST or the end of term, for production in real time. So they could see kind of what it's going to look like. If a customer says, hey, we want to turn auto renew off, that's where you go in, select, okay, EST end of term. And then at that point, they'll be paying that 23% premium, like you mentioned. So some pretty good stuff rolling out. I like how Microsoft has kind of given the partners visibility into how it's going to look, not just dropping it on us saying, hey, this is live, go into Partner Center and figure it out. So the rollout has been steady and has given the partners sort of a heads up on what to expect. And then like you mentioned, Nathan, it's like May 4th rolls around. That's when the enforcement begins. Any clients renewing around that time, that's when EST is going to go into effect. And that's when partners need to really have those conversations with their clients and have good communication to let them know that, hey, if we set this to not renew, you should expect that 23% premium for however long that may be.
Absolutely. And for direct customers who are paying on a credit card through MCA, Microsoft Customer Agreement, you're probably seeing this already if you've hit a renewal. And this is not going to be for some people. It's just a third option, a new choice to make in this process, right? I think it's funny that it's May 4th that they're having it go live. I haven't checked. It looks like May 4th is a Monday. So they tried to align it to the calendar week, but a Star Wars day, right? May the 4th be with you.
I was about to say, thought you may be a Star Wars fan that we just don't know,
Right? And then Revenge of the 5th the next day. It's good.
Yeah.
Financial impact. Obviously, EST is more expensive than even going to a monthly licensing scenario. And I think that's probably where we'll land with a lot of this. I think what it's going to impact people is with kind of surprise. Hey, surprise, you didn't realize this, but this is new, right? A lot of our customers, we do a very proactive effort to manage their licenses, their renewals. It's become a much bigger topic these days. With NCE, if you missed that 7-day window, you may be on the hook for a year of licenses, right? And so the biggest notice is, hey, be aware of your renewals and reach out to your partner and make sure you're on top of your renewal windows, because this really gives us a chance to make those changes ahead of time. If you're thinking about changing SKUs, it's time to really be on top of that. Obviously, that more expensive thing is a bill, and that bill may hit partners a lot too. Some partners might be surprised at that. Well, we thought we canceled that. No, you didn't cancel it, right? You put it into EST. So now what customer thinks they're not paying for, what you don't think you're paying for, you're now paying for. And I think that'll probably be the biggest challenge. I don't think the 23% is all that unreasonable. If you have a customer who's like, I'm just not sure what to do, great. Well, we can go into prorated La La Land and just wait till you make your decision. But it's when you don't realize you ended up in EST that's really going to catch people.
I think it's important to note too, if you're on a SKU that is discounted, maybe you got a promo SKU, that does not carry over into EST. So if you want to keep that discount, that promo pricing, you got to be sure, you got to make sure, one, the partner's on top of it. Two, if you're the client purchasing those licenses, you got to realize that and make a decision. And I get, there's those financial decisions that get held up and whatnot, and that's kind of unavoidable. But, this just allows partners and clients to just prepare better when renewal time comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Austin, will you talk us through some common scenarios, some things we see on this where we're just kind of going to run into this sort of scenario?
Yeah, I think there's a few. The one I just mentioned, finance, let's say April rolls around and the IT director is submitting a renewal, quote approval, right? But the request gets delayed because, finance is finalizing Q2 budgets and everything else like that. So the renewal sits in limbo. The customer has a CSP partner for a few more weeks while they try to decide, and based on historics of the grace period, nothing changes, right? Because it's free. But that's not true now, because once the renewal hits in May, they're going to have to pay that 23% premium if they don't make a decision. So because the enforcement goes live on May 4th, again, everything's going to transition to that EST. They're going to have to pay that 23% premium if they don't make a decision. So because the enforcement goes live on May 4th, again, everything's going to transition to that EST grace period, right? Where month-to-month pricing begins, plus that an additional 3%. So that's one scenario, right? It's the finance, things get held up. Two would be a licensing upgrade. And these are huge conversations for us right now. It's conversations about E3 upgrading to E5. And I think the same is true, right? For the finance scenario, right? It's important, again, for the partner to be on top of this, because if you recommend month to month, and this is something I want to talk about with you, Nathan, if a customer thinks about upgrading, right? Should they move into that 20 plus 3% increase, or should the partner say, hey, we're going to switch you month to month, right? So you're saving 3%. Because that's a scenario that probably should be talked about too. But again, all the scenarios are the same. It's just, you need to be prepared for when your renewal date is, so that if you do, want to go into that EST, you let your partner know so that they can set you up correctly there. And lastly, if there's no action taken, you automatically go into EST, right? And you're billed accordingly until selected otherwise.
Yeah. And I think that applies to, customers that are, partners that aren't managing this carefully. I know that there's partners like, we do most of our revenue through PAX 8. And so PAX 8 defaults to renew. Everything auto renews unless you explicitly say otherwise. And some of the partners are still kind of deciding how they're going to present this to partners. And so we're also waiting for guidance for them. My guess is that this EST is going to end up through a lot of partners become a explicit choice. People are going to have to choose it, that they're going to keep the defaults to renew or cancel, truly cancel. If you want to go into EST, you're going to have to choose that third option. If you're a direct partner, you've got different variables. You're working a partner center. You need to understand what's going on here. To your question about, hey, I'm renewing, I think I'm upgrading, there's a couple of variables there. If you're not reducing your seat count and you're on an annual commit and you're thinking about going from E3 to E5, one of the conversations is unless you're going down, you're safe to actually let your E3 continue until you're ready to make that decision, because Microsoft is very accommodating to upgrades at midterm. Hey, today I want to upgrade today. Great, we'll upgrade you anytime. That's an easy choice from a Microsoft perspective. As you said, you do have the option of saying, oh, you know what, let's go month to month. That's going to give us the flexibility. If you're not sure where you're going and you have some questions about seat counts and what you're doing, then I think moving to month proactively is the right choice, because you're going to save that 3%. But it also involves you making a proactive choice, and it puts you in a position where you can still manage licenses. The problem with EST is it's kind of a more expensive limbo land that you can't do anything in. You're just stuck. You can't add seats, remove seats, change the subscription. You're just kind of living in this grace period, but paying more to do it. So in my opinion, I look at EST as kind of a break glass in case of emergency scenario for us, where we have a customer that maybe just can't make a decision. And we certainly had this. We've had customers, I actually can think of a couple scenarios where maybe we're having trouble getting a hold of them. Maybe they've had some leadership change and they can't make a decision. This tool actually gives us some interesting access as a partner, where I can say, I'm going to move you into EST because it's truly a prorated by the day plan. And so if I can't get a decision from you, I can move you into EST and pay a little bit more, charge you a little bit more. But then when you do come up for air and say, all right, I'm ready to make a decision, we can make that decision now, because I'm not making any longer term commitments for the customer. And so it does have some interesting value for the partners. But I think in my mind, just having read up, dug into this, I think EST is going to be something I hope we don't accidentally fall into. It instead is on purpose choice for scenarios where it lines up to that.
No, that's a good point. Good point about what you make about the upgrades, because you're right. It can happen at any time. You don't need to make that decision before the renewal, because again, Microsoft always allows you to upgrade.
Couple other things to think about here. Actually, I just thought of an upgrade scenario that we could talk about. Maybe you're going from like an O365 license and you want to move to a business premium. That's a common move we do. Microsoft's not thrilled about it because we're going from an Office 365 E3 or a E1 to a business premium. Let's go from an enterprise product to a business product. But in the small business space, there's a lot of people on legacy Office 365 E3. They ran those licenses. There is no upgrade path because Microsoft does not consider business premium an upgrade. So maybe if you're at that renewal window and you're like, I need to get you on business premium, which we've talked about before. If you're a smaller company and you're on Office 365 E3, go to business premium. It's a better product in every way. It's cheaper. It's got more features. It's amazing. If you're under 300 seats, there's no reason to be buying O365 E3. But maybe you're a customer and you're like, I'm not ready to click the button today. EST might be a really great option to say, well, then let's click it in 2 weeks and then we'll have some flexibility around it. So it's really, really key. So I think on this front, one of the conversations is just like, what should we do? What do customers and IT leaders do now? I mean, to me, this comes back to kind of owning and managing your expiration dates. You need to understand your subscriptions and really start to think through what you're doing at that renewal window, whether that's renew or cancel or upgrade or intentionally use EST. You really want to start putting some thought into that. And I think for your CSP customers, as a partner, we need to make sure we communicate this well to people. And if you're an MSP out there, it's important you just understand the changes here. And as I said, use EST strategically, not accidentally, because you might find yourself in a spot where you're like, why is my bill much higher than it's been? Well, you had a license converted into EST, and that could be a rough day when you find that. And if you're managing hundreds or thousands of subscriptions, you need to be ahead of that, because it's easy for something like that to slip under the cracks for a couple months on end. So absolutely.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to even what I talked about with the UX and the APIs. There is API support for EST, Nathan. So if you're using a PSA or billing platform, that Work 365's Momentum, that's all integrated. So makes accounting's life a little easier. But still, yeah, you got to be on top of it, because with all the different subscription types and some customers, they're not even aligned on term dates, right? So you may have 10 different subscriptions and 5 different term dates. So yeah, you really got to be on top of it. But yeah, it's interesting to see this EST come into play because it does give a little bit more insurance, but it's not what we were used to seeing. So
yeah, exactly. Final kind of sound bites. The grace period didn't disappear. It just started charging rent. I love that line. I think that's a really good way to put it. Microsoft's just enforcing, true accounting on this of saying, hey, if you're going to use it, you're going to pay for it. Completely within their rights. It's a big change for us as partners and customers. But I actually think the 23% is not that egregious of a rate. They're not charging 50% more. They're charging just, another 10% or so over the monthly rate. So it's actually a really interesting way to handle it. And, I don't think it'll be a major change for us, but it's just one of those things that you just got to understand it as the ecosystem changes and make sure you make good decisions in that context. So yeah, any closing thoughts for us here, Austin?
No, I think it just goes back to communication with partners and clients. That's really all it's going to take. I mean, I think the only scenario where this makes sense to me is if you're not getting in contact with a client, right? Everything else, it should be pretty straightforward on the path ahead if you're having those conversations in a decent amount of time before the renewal. But yeah, I mean, this is really great for partners if their clients aren't responding. And that does happen. It happens pretty frequently. And that kind of gives the partners a sense of mind or peace of mind that, hey, we're a little bit protected, and it allows them to prepare better too. So I think closing thoughts is just, continue to communicate, be on the same page as your clients, and, hopefully this doesn't have to get used.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Austin, real quick, talk to me through some of the scenarios you've seen recently. We're just coming out of NCE. What are the kind of things you're helping customers with around NCE renewals? I feel like you've been doing a lot of these. What are some insights and just some best practices you've come through with?
Yeah, I think you hit on it earlier. It's making sure that they understand what their terms are, what terms are available, and because like you said, it's like you got 3 different terms. And each term has its own cost and pricing, and it's a lot to keep up with. So first and foremost for me, when I'm having those conversations, it's let's talk about the terms that are available to you, and let's talk about the costs, right? Let's make sure you understand that. Another thing would be, let's take a look at your licensing and plan for your renewal. Is there anything that we can consolidate? Is there anything that we can upgrade you to and still, keep your costs low and optimize everything? So one is making sure the terms are understood. And then 2, it's again, optimizing the licensing, helping clients save money where they can, because, there are clients we see out there and they've got business standard, they've got Defender for Office 365, they've got Intune, they've got Entra. Well, it's like, if you just upgrade to business premium, that bundle, you're going to be saving money. And that's a really common scenario that I've seen. And again, it's just taking a look, sitting down with your clients and really having a conversation with them about, the Microsoft ecosystem, what's available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. With the specials they're running now around Business Premium and Copilot and Defender Suite for Business and E3 and E5, there are a lot of incentives if you're looking at upgrading, even mid-subscription. You decide you want to hit one of these new SKUs. Microsoft has some really interesting bundles we can throw at you, and also some discounts for the first year of trying out these SKUs. So oftentimes we save people quite a bit of money. As you said, we're doing a lot of spreadsheets with licenses just to help people understand it.
I think the Copilot for Business was a big one too. I mean, you're talking $9 from Copilot for Enterprise versus Copilot for Business. And, if you're on a business level SKU, you can acquire Copilot for Business and save yourself $9 or around that per license. So that was another big topic of conversation is any clients that are using Copilot, let's see if they qualify for that business level SKU, because again, you're saving $9 a head there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Microsoft's throwing a ton of value into Copilot this year. We got access to Copilot Co-work, and we've talked about that on previous episodes. We're playing with the preview of that and some really cool things like comparing different models. They call it model council, really interesting stuff coming into Copilot. It's a really exciting time to be playing with the Microsoft licenses and new technologies, a lot of change coming quickly. So reach out if we can help you. We're the Microsoft problem solvers. So you got a licensing problem, you're trying to understand this, you're worried about your renewal. We're here to help. You can reach us at sourcepassmcoe.com or click the link in the subscription. And we look forward to catching you on the next episode of the Demystifying Microsoft podcast. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Demystifying Microsoft, brought to you by the SourcePath Center of Excellence for Microsoft. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen so you don't miss an episode. If you would like to talk to one of our Microsoft problem solvers, click on the link in the episode description or contact our team at sourcepathmcoe.com. Thank you.